Humpback whales keep interrupting orca hunts because something drives them to charge straight into the violence. In one landmark study, scientists documented 115 such interactions, and in 87% of them, the humpbacks were defending a completely different species: seals, sea lions, sunfish, even gray whale calves. They arrive bellowing, slapping 15-ton bodies against the water, driving killer whales off their kills. But if the victims aren't humpbacks, why bother risking everything to save them? That question first grabbed a marine ecologist named Robert Pittman in Antarctica in 2009. A pod of killer whales had cornered a lone Weddell seal on a floating slab of ice. They lined up, drove forward together, and washed the seal off its refuge with a coordinated wave. The seal tumbled into the freezing water, exactly where the orcas wanted it. Pittman was working near the Antarctic Peninsula that January, aboard a small expedition vessel studying the region's so-called Type B killer whales, the pack ice specialists that produce these washing waves. He had a camera running when it happened, and the footage would circulate among cetacean researchers for years afterward. And then, before the killer whales could close in, a humpback whale surged up beneath the seal. It rolled onto its back, lifting the terrified animal clear of the water and onto its own broad chest. When the seal began to slide off, the humpback nudged it back into place with a flipper. It was, in every sense that mattered, holding the seal out of reach. Pittman later called it seemingly deliberate, and you can hear a scientist wrestling with what he'd just seen. A single strange event is easy to dismiss as a fluke, so Pittman didn't stop with the seal on the chest. He and a colleague, Volker Dicke, along with other researchers, started gathering every record they could find of humpbacks tangling with killer whales. Dicke, a biologist based at the University of Cumbria in England, had spent years recording orca vocalizations, and he brought an ear for the acoustic side of the puzzle. The team combed through published sightings, whale watch logs, and first-hand accounts from naturalists on 4 continents, cross-checking dates and locations to weed out duplicates. What they assembled became a landmark paper in the journal Marine Mammal Science in 2016, turning one uncanny moment into a global pattern. That pattern was staggering in its reach. The 115 interactions weren't clustered in one strange corner of the sea. They spanned 62 years, from 1951 to 2012, and came from every major ocean basin on the planet. Reports came in from Monterey Bay off California, from the coast of British Columbia, from the waters around South Africa, from the Sea of Cortez, and from the far southern ocean itself. The earliest record, from 1951, predated most modern whale research by decades. The observers simply hadn't known what to make of it. This wasn't a quirk of Antarctic humpbacks or a single unusual pod. It was something humpbacks were doing again and again across the entire world. And the deeper the researchers looked, the stranger the story became. You might expect a whale that risks its body against killer whales to be protecting its own family. But when the prey species was known, in 89% of cases it was not a humpback at all. These giants were putting themselves in harm's way for animals that shared none of their blood. The list of animals they defended reads almost like a census of the sea. Seals and sea lions. Ocean sunfish, those enormous drifting discs of a fish. Other whales entirely, including the calves of gray whales. The records even included California sea lions, harbor seals, stellar sea lions, and at least one instance involving a school of herring the orcas had corralled. Only 11% of interventions involved humpbacks defending fellow humpbacks. The overwhelming majority of their effort went to creatures they had no obvious reason to care about. If that generosity wasn't puzzling enough, consider how the humpbacks even find these hunts. They don't stumble into them by accident. Killer whales make distinctive sounds when they attack prey, and humpbacks, instead of fleeing, turn and swim toward them. They move deliberately in the direction of the killing. And they cover a real distance to get there. Observers have watched humpbacks travel several kilometers across open water, driving hard toward a hunt they could easily have ignored. In one Monterey Bay episode from May 2012, researchers watched humpbacks arrive during an orca attack on a gray whale calf, and then linger for more than 6 hours after the calf had already been killed, refusing to leave the carcass to the pod. Sometimes they don't come alone. Groups of as many as 8 humpbacks have converged on a single event, arriving from different directions, drawn to the violence like it was a signal calling them in. Once they arrive, there is nothing gentle about what follows. This is not a whale placing itself quietly between hunter and prey. Humpbacks come to fight. Their pectoral flippers stretch up to 5 meters long, the longest limbs of any animal on Earth, and they use them as weapons, swinging and slapping at the killer whales with barnacle-crusted edges hard enough to draw blood. Those barnacles, the species Caranula diadema, embed themselves in the whale's skin and turn each flipper into a studded club. An adult humpback can weigh 30 to 40 tons, and a single fluke slap lands with enough force to stun or injure an attacking orca. They fight loudly too. During these interventions, humpbacks unleash loud, trumpeting vocalizations that carry across the water like war cries, and they do not give up easily. Some of these confrontations have lasted over 7 hours. Hours of a humpback holding its ground, bellowing, striking, refusing to let the killer whales finish their meal. This is exhausting, dangerous work, and the humpbacks choose it. So the obvious question becomes unavoidable. Why would any animal volunteer for that? To answer it, you have to understand the one enemy a humpback whale truly has. In the vast ocean, a full-grown humpback is nearly untouchable. Almost nothing hunts it. Almost. The single exception, the only natural predator humpbacks face, is the killer whale. And killer whales don't waste energy attacking healthy adult humpbacks. They target the young. Mammal-eating orcas prey on humpback calves, especially during the long migrations, when mothers guide their newborns across open ocean toward feeding grounds. A humpback calf is born around 4 meters long and travels alongside its mother on journeys that can exceed 8,000 kilometers, from tropical breeding lagoons off Hawaii or Mexico to cold feeding grounds near Alaska. A calf swimming those routes is exactly the kind of vulnerable, valuable target a pod hunts for. The evidence of these attacks is written directly onto the whales' bodies. Look closely at the flukes and flippers of many adult humpbacks, and you'll see rake marks, parallel scars left by the teeth of killer whales that grabbed them when they were small. Surveys of some populations have found these tooth rake scars on roughly a third of adults, a permanent record of encounters survived in infancy. Those scars are the survivor's record. Calves are most vulnerable in their first year of life, and the ones who make it carry the proof on their skin. That predator relationship reframes everything. Suddenly the humpback charging a hunt isn't a random do-gooder. It's an animal responding to the one creature that has ever threatened its children. And that leads scientists to a striking idea borrowed not from the ocean, but from the sky. The idea is called mobbing, and if you've ever seen small birds swarming a hawk, you already know it. Crows and songbirds will gang up on an owl or a hawk near their nest, dive bombing and shrieking, driving the predator away before it can do harm. It's well documented, and it works. The birds aren't rescuing a specific chick, they're attacking the threat itself. Here's the crucial detail about mobbing, the one that unlocks the humpback mystery. The behavior is triggered by the predator's presence, not by the identity of any victim. The birds respond to the hawk, period. Applied to humpbacks, this suggests something elegant and a little chilling. The humpbacks aren't necessarily reacting to the seal or the sea lion. They're reacting to the killer whales. And by harassing and disrupting those killer whales at every opportunity, humpbacks may make their entire local ocean a more dangerous place for their own enemy. This grows into what researchers call the inadvertent altruism hypothesis, the leading explanation for everything we've seen. The argument is quietly humbling. Humpbacks may not distinguish, in the heat of the moment, which prey is being attacked. They hear the killer whales, feeding calls, and that sound alone triggers the response. They come to fight orcas, not to save seals. If that's true, then the rescues are a side effect, an accident of timing and instinct. The humpback doesn't set out to be a hero. It sets out to disrupt a predator. But here's what the hypothesis can't erase. Even if the motive is pure self-interest, the outcome consistently saves non-humpback prey. The seal lives. The sea lion escapes. The gray whale calf swims away. Whatever the whale intended, the result looks like mercy. For a while, that neat explanation seemed to close the case. Selfish instinct, accidental kindness, mystery solved. And then certain cases refused to fit inside the box, because some humpbacks kept protecting their charges long after any self-defense logic could explain it. Return for a moment to that seal on the humpback's chest. The killer whales weren't pressing a relentless assault the entire time, yet the humpback kept the seal balanced on its body, adjusting it repeatedly, nudging it back to safety whenever it started to slip. That is not the behavior of an animal simply making noise at a predator. That is an animal tending to a specific, individual creature in its care. And the seal wasn't alone in receiving this lingering protection. In multiple documented cases, interventions continued even after the killer whales had departed. The threat was gone, yet the humpback stayed, guarding animals that no longer needed guarding against an enemy that had already left. That persistence exceeds what pure self-defense would require. This is where the clean theory starts to crack open, and where the real tension of the story lives. Because you can build an airtight case that humpback intervention evolved from selfish, anti-predator instinct. And you can still stand on the deck of a boat, watch a whale cradle a seal on its chest and adjust it with a flipper, and feel that no word fits the moment except rescue. Pittman himself couldn't shake it. He called the seal-saving behavior seemingly deliberate, because as a scientist he couldn't prove intent, and as a witness he couldn't deny what it looked like. That gap between what can be measured and what can be seen is exactly where the debate now lives. And it is a genuine debate. Cognitive scientists argue over whether this behavior reflects something like empathy, an awareness of another creature's distress, or whether it's a sophisticated but essentially automatic reflex. There is no consensus on whether humpbacks intend to save other species. The honest answer, right now, is that we don't know what's happening inside the mind of a whale that carries a seal to safety. Maybe that uncertainty is the truest place to land, because the more you sit with the evidence, the more it resolves not into an answer, but into a paradox. A behavior born from anti-predator defense has quietly become one of nature's most reliable acts of interspecies protection. Everything lines up to make humpbacks the perfect accidental guardians. They have the anatomy for it, those enormous flippers, that armored bulk, the sheer power to challenge a pod of killer whales and survive. And they have the boldness to charge toward danger that most animals would flee. Few creatures in the ocean could do what they do, and fewer still would try. The instinct driving all of it most likely evolved for the oldest reason in nature, to protect their own vulnerable calves from the only predator that hunts them. That's the selfish seed at the root of it. But the extraordinary thing is where that seed has grown. The result extends protection far beyond their own species, spilling out to seals and sunfish and the calves of other whales entirely, a circle of safety far wider than evolution ever intended. And that circle is only getting wider, because there are simply more humpbacks now. After the whaling bans that ended centuries of slaughter, humpback populations have recovered strongly, returning to oceans that had nearly lost them. Commercial hunting had cut some populations to as little as a few % of their original numbers before the International Whaling Commission's 1966 protection for the species and the broader moratorium of 1986. Since then, many populations have rebounded to tens of thousands of animals, and in 2016, the United States removed 9 of 14 distinct humpback populations from its endangered list. More whales means more eyes on more hunts, and more of these interventions witnessed every year. Which means we're not watching a fading curiosity. We're watching a phenomenon becoming more visible with each passing season, as recovering whales patrol the same waters as the predator they cannot ignore. Orcas remain the only species humpbacks routinely confront. Everything else in the sea, they let be. But when the killer whales start to hunt, the humpbacks come. So we're left with a creature that fights its ancient enemy for reasons that may be entirely its own, and in doing so, again and again, saves the lives of strangers. Call it reflex if the evidence demands it. Call it rescue if your eyes insist on it. What it truly is, at bottom, is this: an instinct that looks like heroism. Whether the humpback knows it or not, the seal on its chest is alive, the killer whales are driven off, and the ocean's most fearsome hunters have met the one giant willing to stand in their way. That may be the most honest kind of heroism there is, the kind that asks for nothing and doesn't even know it's happening. If this glimpse into the ocean's strangest guardians moved you, consider subscribing to come along for the next story.